Glossophobia, or a fear of speaking, is a very common phobia that affects 75% of the population. Was there a time when you felt like your knees were trembling down, your lips were shaking, and your mouth undecided of what to say next? This is the same predicament of the larger population, especially when the medium used is the English language. Presenting the analysis of problems in speaking as a macro skill among select grade 11 Humss students in Aurelio Arago Memorial National High School, a collaborative action research by Ms. Charish Gregorio, Ms. Cecille R, Ms. Noemi Santua, and yours truly, Mr. Roberto Ramos, in partial fulfillment of the requirements in ELT 205, English Communication Skills. Introduction. A spoken language is produced and processed in real time. It is considered the most difficult of the four macro skills. The time it takes for a speaker and a listener to plan and deliver what they want to say and comprehend what they hear is very limited. On the one hand, it is also known as a productive skill because it presents observable evidences of language acquisition. According to Chastain, speaking is a skill that concerns components such as grammar, strategy, sociolinguistics, and discourse. Hence, it is worth saying that speaking is a multifaceted skill. On top of this, it is also supported by body languages such as gestures, facial expressions, or nonverbal communications. Speaking is also a required skill wherever we go. We use it from simple conversation to formal public speaking. If anything, the primary goal of teaching speaking as a macro skill is communicative competence. Thus, mastering speaking and achieving communicative competence among students pose challenges in the teaching and learning process. Teachers employ approaches and strategies to ensure that speaking competencies are achieved and demonstrated by students. Despite various teaching methods, students are still having difficulty with this skill. Based on test results of select students in 100 countries and regions conducted by Education First, the Philippines benchmarked as high, Malaysia in the moderate range, to Indonesia with low, and Thailand having very low proficiency in the language. Singapore was the only ASEAN country to enter the top 10 with a very high proficiency band. This English proficiency test includes written and oral communication skills. Hence, we can say that Filipinos must not be complacent despite maintaining their ranking and should strive even more to improve English proficiency. Being one of the most challenging macro skills, it is also essential to pay attention to speaking as a discipline and a language used for communication purposes. Thus, analysis of problems in speaking as a macro skill will allow us to improve teaching pedagogies. Research objectives. This research probes the following research objectives. First, to determine the level of fluency of the select grade 11 Humanities and Social Sciences students of Aurelio Arago Memorial National High School in speaking the second language. Second, to identify the causes affecting difficulties and problems they encounter in various speaking activities. And last, to make suggestions for ways to improve speaking as a macro skill using the English language.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will be presenting to you two of the parts of our research, the literature review and the research methodology. Let me first give you our literature review. For the first section of our literature review, teaching speaking. According to Noonan, teaching speaking is to teach students about the sounds and patterns, use stress, intonation, and of course, rhythm of a second language. And Richard 2008 emphasized that In assisting students' development in communicative efficiency in speaking, the teacher can use the Valence Activities method, which integrates language input, structured output, and the communicative output. In the second section of literature review, we have here the teacher roles in teaching speaking. Paul reiterates that there are several principles that teachers should consider to enable learners to use English when interacting. An initial activity is to introduce and practice patterns that feel relevant to the learners, and the last consideration is to build their inner spirit to deal with confusing and novel situations is by trying to present them with puzzles to solve and ensure their successful outcome. Paul, Hammer, and Terry identify teacher roles in teaching speaking, and according to them, the teacher should allow students to struggle independently, in which they contribute to the discussion by bringing new information and maintaining students' engagement. Their main point is that the teacher must not dominate the conversation. For the last section, since our study is an analysis of problems in speaking, we include some of the common problems that encounters by students in speaking. The first one is the law of motivation in speaking. According to Cook, language learners perform better when they are motivated, thus leading them to high achievement in learning English. Next is self-confidence. For Lawrence, students with self-confidence tend to succeed in school because they trust in themselves and never lose up. So, it is important to encourage students to build self-confidence among themselves. Lastly, the speaking anxiety. Through Rodriguez and Avery, we learned that foreign language anxiety is situation specific, meaning to say, language anxiety stems from different factors such as learners' sense of oneself, language acquisition challenges, variations in learners, and target language cultures. So, we as teacher should first trace where language anxiety of students root from. The next part is the research methodology. For the method, we use qualitative research because our study aims to provide a thorough analysis of speaking problems as a macro skill among selected students. So, using a qualitative approach allows the researchers to study students to understand the case of oral language anxiety. The study also employed descriptive method for the purpose to determine the level of fluency of the selected students in speaking the second language. The data gathering instrument used in this study was a self-made questionnaire. Since face-to-face conduct of survey is impossible due to pandemic, we use Google Forms. And lastly, the study conducted among selected grade 11 Humss student of Aurelio Arago National High School, school year 2021 to 2022. 15 students were randomly selected to participate in this action research.
Good day, everyone. I am Charish Gregorio. For the continuation of our research presentation, this time I will discuss the results, interpretation, and analysis. Due to pandemic, face-to-face interaction with the students is prohibited. With that, we gathered data from them through Google Forms. The age of the respondents ranges from 16 to 24 years old, 16 as the youngest and 24 as the oldest. This graph shows that 40% of the respondents are 16 years old and the other 40% are 17 years old. The remaining 3 respondents are 18, 23, and 24 years old. This graph shows that there are 73.3% of female respondents and 26.7% 26.6% male respondents. Majority of the respondents is female. To measure the level of fluency in speaking the English language, the respondents assessed themselves and rated each statement from 1 to 4. 1 for not observed, 2 for seldom, 3 sometimes, and 4 for often. The figure in statement number 1 shows that all of the respondents experienced hesitations. They pause and think before or during speaking. For statement number 2, majority of the respondents experienced adding sounds, syllables, or words when speaking. Only 3 of them did not experience this problem. For statement number 2, majority of the respondents experienced adding sounds, syllables, or words when speaking. Only 3 of them did not experience this problem. Next, when it comes to phrase repetitions, 13 out of 15 respondents experienced it, and only 2 students from the sample class did not observe this problem. For statement 5, highest percentage of the sample class seldom experienced repeating one syllable while speaking. Only 1 student experiencing it frequently, and 4 of them did not experience this kind of disfluency. In part word syllable repetitions, 40% of the respondents rated seldom and the other 40% of them rated sometimes. None of them frequently experienced it and the remaining 3 respondents did not experience this problem. On the other hand, for statement 7, 40% of the respondents sometimes observe repeating one word syllable. 26.7% of them seldom observe it, and the remaining 5 respondents did not experience this difficulty. Meanwhile, in part word syllable repetition, the result shows that 33.3% of the sample class seldom experienced it and the other 33.3% did not notice it. 1 of them frequently experienced this problem and the 4 of them sometimes observed it. For statement 9, 2 out of 15 respondents did not observe this kind of disfluency and 13 respondents experienced sound repetitions, just like the given example. Moreover, for statement 10, majority of the class claimed that they are stretching or holding a sound when speaking. Only 2 of them did not experience prolongations. For statement 11, this figure shows that 13 out of 15 respondents experiencing increased muscle tension noted in the mouth, throat, or lips when speaking. Only 2 of them did not observe this difficulty. Lastly, for statement 12, the result indicates that majority of the students also experiencing non-speech behaviors, 3 of them frequently experiencing them and only 2 students of the sample class rated that they did not observe them. After identifying the level of fluency of the students, I will also discuss the common problems that the students encountered while speaking. And in order to get the data, respondents only need to select 2 problems they frequently observed when speaking. The graph below shows that the most crucial problem of the majority of the students is grammar consciousness and made up to 60% of the sample class. Meanwhile, 40% of them admitted to have lack of self-confidence and have an anxiety while speaking. Moreover, 26.7% experienced that they are pronouncing words poorly and 20% of them have a poor vocabulary. Only 2 out of 15 respondents have a low motivation when speaking. Students also had given a chance to suggest ways to improve English speaking skills. They came up with the following suggestions. According to them, having confidence in speaking is the best way to improve their English speaking skills. Further, most of them share the importance of exposure in vocabulary building and pronunciation improving activities. They also included conversing with native English speakers, listening to podcasts, watching English documentaries, news and movies, and reading books are some ways to practice and to improve speaking skills.
Summary of findings. Following a thorough assessment of the collected data, the researchers arrived at the following findings. First, the grade 11 Humss students in Aurelio Arago Memorial National High School pay less attention to speaking English. The primary reason for this is because they prefer to use their native or mother tongue language which they grew up with and practice at home. In this regard, most of the respondents experience these fluencies. Second, speaking is widely viewed as an essential language skill, and as such, it should be prioritized in development. So teaching and learning speaking must be a priority since it is how we tend to communicate in everyday life. It allows us to form connections and influence decisions. Also, it gives us the ability to convey information verbally and in a way that the listener can understand. Third, students had minimum opportunities in learning to speak, and most of them encountered problems in the following areas. First, grammar consciousness. This is the main area in which students struggle when speaking English. They are hesitant to talk because they cannot form correct grammatical sentences. They are also occasionally perplexed when arranging correct sentences in conversations. Second is lack of self-confidence. The students are hesitant to speak English in front of their teachers and peers. They are afraid of making mistakes and of their teacher correcting their errors in speaking. Similarly, they believe their classmates will underestimate them. The respondents also experience anxiety of speaking. They are worried when they speak a second language. They are nervous about sharing their thoughts and opinions in class and are terrified when their teacher asks them to answer questions in English. Poor pronunciation is another problem encountered by the students. They were frequently inhibited when attempting to say something in class because they were concerned about correctly pronouncing some words in learning to speak. They often mispronounced English words and struggled to correct word stress and intonation patterns. Next on the list is poor vocabulary. Due to a lack of vocabulary knowledge, the students have difficulties translating words that were given to them spontaneously. When speaking English, they are unable to select appropriate words. Last but not the least is low motivation. The people with whom the students usually contact with have also had limited exposure to the English language. They might not have an excellent environment to help them learn to speak English. When doing collaborative tasks, these students tend to switch to their mother tongue and in some cases become silent or passive in class. Fourth, the majority of Humss 11 students consider self-confidence key to improving their English speaking skills. Confidence is fundamental to communication. As human beings, it transcends and includes the way we communicate, perceive others, and are perceived by them. It is believed that confidence is the most tangible expression of who we are. When you tell yourself that you can learn something, you will be more capable to learn. Students who are self-confident feel sure of their abilities to learn English and always tell themselves they can speak the language. Conclusions. Based on the above-mentioned findings, it can be concluded that, first, speaking in a second language is demanding nowadays. Fluency in English plays a critical role in many aspects of life. It is a need to communicate with other people all over the globe. Second, selected respondents' speaking skills were affected by low motivation, lack of self-confidence, speaking anxiety, poor vocabulary, poor pronunciation, and grammar consciousness. Third, students feel more comfortable using the mother tongue language during the class instead of English. They were afraid of committing mistakes rather than focusing on the thoughts they were about to say. It can also be concluded that almost all students experience these fluencies in speaking because they are grammar conscious. Next, Lack of vocabulary and knowledge in grammar structure limits students' speaking engagement. A good knowledge of grammar helps students to make sentences clear enough to understand. However, improper use of grammar will not convey meaningful messages. Sixth, non-speech behaviors such as blinking of the eyes, slapping body, bending, or moving body in some way to get speech started are also common among the respondents. Perhaps this is due to a lack of time for preparation and a failure to pay attention to the proper position and posture while speaking. Thus, they are no longer aware of their unwanted mannerisms that cause distractions to spectators or the listeners. Also in this study, inhibiting factors to practice speaking in English include anxiety and low self-efficacy. This is commonly signed by wrong attribution, body signals, shyness, worry, panic, and even short breath. 8. Instructional strategies unmotivate some students. And last but not the least, with the prevailing health crisis and the current education setup, teaching speaking has received less attention and effort. Recommendations. Considering the results of the study, the researchers would like to recommend the following. First, to improve their speaking ability, students should focus on their weaknesses and must be exposed to different speaking activities to overcome hesitation and to express thoughts and ideas in an organized manner. They can participate in public speaking activities that employ the English language to become more comfortable in speaking before large crowds. This will help them gain confidence, overcome shyness, and identify early on what they need to correct and improve. Second, before speaking in public, students may rehearse in front of the mirror to see and observe oneself. In this manner, unwanted mannerisms can be avoided and posture will be corrected. Third, the students should not be afraid of making mistakes or being corrected when speaking English. If you are making mistakes in speaking, that means you're trying to express yourself more eagerly and more enthusiastically. By making mistakes, you can find the areas you need to work on as you move into fluency. The researchers also recommend teachers to develop new strategies to reinforce speaking instruction and learning. This will help students improve language development in order to encourage effective spoken communication. Fifth, teachers should use more engaging activities that help students become acquainted with the English language and encourage them to communicate. English teachers must not only give their sole attention to infusing learners with lectures and drills to enhance their speaking ability. They must also employ confidence-boosting activities to make learners believe that they can better themselves in this area. Sixth, to improve students' communicative competence, teachers should focus on teaching vocabulary. It is crucial that our students have explicit, robust vocabulary to support their verbal communication. This would allow our students to access academic language and discourse and facilitates their comprehension. Lastly, it is hereby acclaimed that this paper can be used as an additional basis for future studies of the same focus that will further confirm the findings of this research.